to Just Between Us. Just Between Us refers to you, our viewing audience, my co-partner, co-host, co-producer, and husband, William Smithers, and our guests. We are so pleased that Just Between Us is up on the internet, www.sb-justbetweenus.com, and we have many hits from all over the world. And also, it is with PEG Media, which means that many other cities throughout the United States are now playing our show. So we try to have topics of interest not only to the Santa Barbara audience, but to a worldwide audience. And that is what I think we have today. So I'm going to turn the show over to my better half, Bill, who will introduce our guests.
Thank you, my dear. Do you have young people at home or whom you care about who are playing football, baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, or even cheerleading? If so, you probably know something about concussion. But are you sure that you know what it can lead to? Just in case, let's take a look.
6 years ago, Max Conrad played quarterback and defensive end for Walport High School in Oregon. He also played special teams.
Chipped up by Conrad, took it in the head too as he got run over by Warren.
Max was a senior and a team captain. He was known for rarely coming off the field and for never wanting to, no matter how much punishment he took. After taking several hard hits during this game, a doctor said he suffered a concussion, but Max played the next Friday night.
Back to throw, here comes the blitz, and he's going to get mauled over.
Max took several more hits in that game, and then, at halftime, he collapsed unconscious on the sidelines. Months in a coma.
Throw me the ball. Throw it to me. Attaboy.
Because his teenage brain was still not fully developed, he was more vulnerable to second impact syndrome, when a second concussion occurs before the first one has healed. Second impact syndrome can be fatal.
Tell me if you need a break. Yes? Okay.
In Max's case, his brain was severely damaged and his life forever altered.
What happened?
What happened?
Yeah.
You were hurt in a football game.
What?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Our guests today are very knowledgeable about what we've just seen. From Santa Barbara's Jody House, Mark Palmer, and Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital's Trauma Services Medical Director, Dr. Stephen Kaminski. Welcome, gentlemen. Mark Palmer, are there lessons that we have to learn from what we've just seen?
The first lesson that I think is most important is do everything in your power to avoid the brain injury. Brain injury affects people for most of their lives. So anything that can be done for prevention and common sense is something that we should pay attention to.
And yours was done from an auto accident, right?
Yes.
Your brain injury was from an auto accident?
Yes, I wrestled with a Detroit City bus about 48 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the bus won. However, that there's hope, and after being in a coma and going through as many stories have, I have been able to live a very fulfilling life with a brain injury.
Well, Dr. Kaminski, what is a concussion?
You know, that's a great question of which we have kind of an incomplete answer. Most people, if you ask them, they would answer when you get knocked out, of course. But frankly, probably less than 10% of concussions actually require you to be knocked out. More often, you just feel something vague. You have a headache, you have a difficult time sleeping, or you can't concentrate, you feel a little fuzzy. These are all what could be a concussion. And so kind of just waiting for the real severe event where you black out probably underrepresents the vast majority of these events.
Well, I'm sorry, dear, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Now, getting back to what Mark said, safe driving is very important. And as a senior citizen who has to take a driving test, I've been driving for over 60 years, but I want to be safe and I want the other people to be safe. I am now taking 6 lessons before I take the test. 6 lessons just so I will be a safe driver.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But talking about students and student athletes, and this is a very severe problem. This is happening a lot. What is the incidence of concussion-related brain injuries as far as we know them?
Well, if I can answer, that would be relative to the student and the community, because frankly, it's vastly underreported. We have a warrior mentality in the way that we play sports and athletics, that we sort of tough things out and we don't sort of honestly report. So although some reports would say that 5 to 10% of students playing sports, specifically football, have suffered a concussion, that number may be as high as 50%. It's not just football. Girls soccer is a sport that has a high incidence of concussions. So it's underreported, it's not truly appreciated, and I'm not sure we know the answer to that.
Well, of course we know that if you're playing football or baseball, you can get hit in the head, you can fall and hit your head, you can race against a wall like we're going to talk about a little later and hit your head. But actually a blow to the head is not actually necessary. Isn't it true that if your head accelerates and stops without blowing, in other words, if your head is jarred, there can be damage to your brain?
Absolutely. The incidence of concussions in girls has been felt to be related to the fact that they have a longer neck that's less muscular, and that when their head twists to the side, that as the brain floats inside the skull, although they're not struck directly on the head, the brain's impact on the side of the skull results in concussions. So concussions can come from something that's obvious when we watch our Sunday football and see a high impact collision, but it can also just be jarring because the brain is fluid within the skull itself.
And it's so easy to bump into things, you know, a door maybe or whatever.
Absolutely.
So have a door hit you.
You know, it's unclear also what the magnitude of the impact has to be for you to suffer a concussion. So the one thing that we're learning is that you can't equate impact with concussion. Different people experience the impact differently.
Well, isn't it true that there's called a second impact syndrome or something of that kind? In other words, isn't it true that after one suffers a concussion, that one is like almost 4 times as likely to get a concussion from a next impact, even though it's much less than the first?
I can continue to talk, of course, as I want to include all our folks, but you know, I'm obviously very passionate about this particular problem. The issue is that the developing brain is more sensitive to injury. And so after you've suffered a first injury, you are much more susceptible if you get hit with even small impacts to a second injury. And so when we talk about adult athletes, they're at risk, but actually high school and adolescent athletes are even more at risk because their brain is still developing. So that's absolutely true.
What is the age when the brain supposedly has stopped developing?
Kind of an unclear,
approximate.
You know, kind of unclear. We think between 18 and 21, you probably have reached certain maturity. So that issue that we're talking about, this youth-related sports injury that is extremely dangerous, probably peaks at young adulthood and then recedes a bit.
Mark, well, I want to come back to our student-athlete injury that we've been talking about, but you come from Jody House. Tell us what Jody House does. What is its mission here?
So Jody House's mission is to create a place for people with brain injuries and their families come and learn the things they need to learn to have a fulfilling life. So we've been there for 30 years. The original vision of Jody House was by a mother whose daughter had a severe brain injury, and she'd lost all of her friends, had no place to socialize. And so Jody House was created for that event. We've evolved over the time. We're very proud of who we are. We're very proud of who we cater to. And our whole mission is to be the source of information for the community and help those with brain injuries and their families.
Does Jody House have inpatient and outpatients?
Nope, we're all outpatient. There's no inpatient.
They're all outpatient?
Yes. And it is, it's a day program for people to come to.
So you help people who have a brain injury or who have family members or friends with brain injury to know where to go to get help.
Where to go, where to reconnect with friends. You know, when you have a brain injury, frequently your friends don't know how to react to your new self. So you need a place to connect and have new friends. So Jody House is about creating that place, a safe place for folks with brain injury.
Is there an age limit on the people who can attend Jody House?
Our limit right now is that you have to be over 15, I believe, to come in.
Well, Mark, what about you? Have you sustained an injury yourself?
Yes, I sustained an injury at age 15. I do have perhaps an interesting message for parents that wrestle with the issue, the topic of today. It's really tough. You hear how tough the concussions can be.
Yes.
And if the reaction is, I'm not going to let our kids play sports, the kids will find a way to play sports, right? The message, it was so hard for me when my parents wanted to shield me from the world after the injury. So it's a piece of, let's go out and help our sons and daughters learn how to do this as safe as possible.
Well, I understand that, but I also think that the dangers, the risks involved are still, although becoming better known, are still not as well known and as well appreciated as they should be, which is one of the reasons we wanted to have this program today. Now, Dr. Kaminski, Mark has just told us, and we all know kids want to play, and you tell them they can't play, they'll find a way to play. And if the kid has, most kids think they're invulnerable. So if they get an injury, like we saw in the video, they want to get up and play again. And the problem is not only with their own attitude about it, in my opinion. There's a problem with the coach's attitude. There's a problem with teachers' attitude. There's a problem with parents' attitude, I think. Please comment.
Oh, I agree, and I think as we talk about it, it comes down from what we see on our Sundays, what we see adults do, and the praising of the athlete who plays injured. And while that may be okay if you have an elbow sprain and you're not at risk of further injury to your elbow, that's not the same when you have a brain injury, of which a concussion is. And there's a consequence to pay. We see the long-term consequences of this in the professional athletes like Junior Seau, who committed suicide and very likely may have been the result of the chronic effects of repetitive head injury. Now, while he may have been a professional making a lot of money that made a decision understanding the risks, the children, the kids playing sports don't have that choice, and we need to make that choice for them so that they're safe.
Now, if the kid just insists on playing, are there not new safety measures? I mean, that they can wear helmets and face and...
I guess I'd give you a mixed answer to that. The first part would be to say if a kid insists on playing after an injury, it's kind of, our responsibility, and I think we all agree that. Now,
yes, but I'm talking about before the injury.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of speaking about protective equipment,
yes.
I think that my concern, and actually what some of the science is suggesting, that you actually are at risk of a higher impact injury if you think that you're protected by the equipment. Oh. So you unleash yourself with more force because you feel even more invincible. So helmets may help, but they aren't an answer for the problem. And as I said in soccer, for example, where this rotational force, where you get shoulder bumped and your head swings at a rapid pace, and that actually results in the injury, and that wouldn't be helped by a helmet. So helmets, I wouldn't say go without them, but they're not the be-all answer.
Well, I think that's true, and I think it's also true that some teams, some schools, everybody is having money problems and want to save money probably on equipment where they can. Some teams are using reconditioned helmets. Some